Yes, it's another Monday morning, July 7th, 7-7. Let's play some lucky sevens for the lotto in New York State. Hey, you never know, baby. $1 to dream. Welcome to Weber This Week on a Monday morning, July the 7th. Good to be with you. Dog in the house. And usually we have people on the couch for my show, but this gentleman is not on the couch. He's via phone, and his name is Jim Eichenhofer. And Jim, of course, was an outstanding reporter for the Finger Lakes Times. We'll talk about where he came from and where he's at right now. Jim, welcome to the show, and it's nice to have you on Weber This Week. Thanks for taking time out this morning.
Hey, no problem. It's my pleasure to be on.
Jim, let's talk about yourself. You're a local boy. Give our viewers that may not know you, give us an overview of where you were born, where you were brought up, where you went to school, college, and
Sure.
and the whole background scenario. First off.
Yep. I was born in Geneva, but I grew up in Waterloo. My parents actually were both teachers. They're both retired now. My mom is somebody a lot of people in the area and the community know because she was a teacher in Waterloo for, I want to say, 20-something years. So I went to college at Ithaca College, so I kind of stayed somewhat local for that as well. So from there, I worked at the Finger Lakes Times for about 6 years in their sports department. Also had a few other roles before I was moved up to sports with the newspaper there, including an internship I did when I was in college. So obviously, I have tons of background from upstate New York and the Finger Lakes. That's where I was raised, and I guess a big reason why I became such a big sports guy and was, just developed that as something that was a huge passion for me.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jim, certainly leading up to the show this morning, Jim Eichenhofer joins us. Geneva boy, grew up in Waterloo. His parents both teachers. Doing a little research for you coming on this morning, I found out some interesting stuff. I got involved in the media in 1970, and I had a passion to do sports on the radio, and I started with a ketchup bottle when I was 7, 8 years old, and I interviewed and auditioned in 1970 and got the job at SFW, and I had some 18 years experience to try to do this work, and I've been doing it an awful long time. But looking at your background and reading some of the interviews you've done down south, you certainly spoke highly of your ability to sit reporting for Finger Lakes Times, going to a soccer game or a volleyball game with 48 people, and the next day you would head out to Toronto, check out the Raptors, and there were 20-some thousand people. So I think that fed your passion, and you were able to write about the NBA and send it off to various publications. So you did a lot of pre-work, and when you did interview for the Hornets job, you had done a lot of background, and maybe that's the reason you got the job.
Yeah. Another thing too. My brother played. He played for Waterloo in high school, and he played college at Roberts Wesleyan in Rochester. So that was another thing that kind of guided me or led me into basketball. I still talk with a lot of people. Know Dave. He's a financial advisor in the area, Geneva, Waterloo, pretty much Penn Yan, the whole area. But I still talk basketball with him pretty much every day. When I was at a lot of people didn't know this, but when I was at the Finger Lakes Times, I did a lot of magazine freelance writing. Mm-hmm. So I was doing my full-time job. I think the article that you referenced was from Sports Business Journal a few years ago. So I was doing my full-time job at the Finger Lakes Times, but I was also doing freelance stuff that was specifically basketball. Almost all of it was NBA. There was some college here and there, but that was what put me in position to get hired by the Hornets when this job opened up. Obviously, it was great to have on my resume that I was a full-time writer at a newspaper. That was huge, but I think what put me above the other people that applied was that I already had a bunch of NBA experience, including doing articles on a lot of prominent players in the NBA. I did a lot of Raptors articles, like you mentioned, including some big features on Chris Bosh when he played there. Mm-hmm. So I always think of it that way, that was really the thing that kind of put me over the top, because when jobs like this open up, there's always a few hundred people who apply. So you have to really have something specific that piques their interest, or a lot of times they'll probably just toss your resume in the trash, just kind of look past it. So
been there, done that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I applied for a lot of jobs in the NBA before I got this one too. It's not like, all of a sudden one day I said, hey, I want to work in the NBA, and then 2 days later I got hired. I applied for, I want to say, about 8 or 10 jobs. Not all of them were in writing, so that was one obstacle for me but once I started to see more of those jobs open up, that's when I knew I had a chance to get something like what I have.
Well, let me ask you something so you can explain to our viewers. What is exactly your job, and what do you do day to day? I know that may be a tough question, but give us an explanation of your job title and what your normal day to day during the NBA season is all about.
Sure. Well, I'm basically the main writer for Pelicans.com, which is the official website of the New Orleans Pelicans. During the season, the big bulk of what I do is game coverage. During the past season, for example, I was at every single game, all 82 games, home and away. So on game days, I do a lot of coverage of our shoot-arounds in the morning, talking to players and getting interviews with the coaches, and then obviously covering the game itself at night. And then on the days in between, we have practices or off days, and so those are days where I write a lot of feature articles on players or just updates on guys that are doing well, or guys that may have just gotten in the rotation, or articles on Anthony Davis, who was an all-star last season. So during the season, that's pretty much the quickest way to explain what I do. There's more to it, obviously, than that, but that's the main thing. During the off-season, there's kind of segments of the summer where it's busy. There's other parts of the summer where there's time where I can take vacation, like I just did. But basically during the summer, you have the periods leading up to the draft where you have guys come. Basically all of June mostly is the draft. July is free agency, which teams can officially start signing guys on July 11th, coming up here soon. And then once the schedule will get released in the beginning of August, and we do a bunch of stuff about that, just getting people ready for the next season. Then I'd say around late September is when we really start gearing up for the next season to start, because training camp is usually around October 1st, and then when that happens, it gets busy again, where it's kind of an every single day thing where you always have something going on from October through whenever your season ends in the spring.
Well, the NBA, appears to be a glorious life for the superstars, but as you mentioned, you covered all 82 games, so I guess there were a lot of times you got back home 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, right? I guess where you have to fly out to and come back, and I'm sure that's not what you'd say the ideal Las Vegas trip. I mean, you're on the go, and you're constantly getting back late from a game, flying home, and it's doesn't look as gracious and as grandeur as it seems like it is.
No, that's true. I think that's one of the biggest things I noticed, or the biggest surprises to me, was I knew kind of what I was getting into. I knew that was part of it, but to actually experience it is definitely a different thing. To realize all the nights where you're going to sleep at 2 or 3 o'clock, even sometimes a little later than that, it definitely wears you out. But at the same time, what's funny is I think about this sometimes is I really try not to complain too much about anything, because in a lot of the cities we'd get in at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, there'd be fans out standing outside, even in Minnesota in January, like waiting for the players to get autographs. So it's one of the things that kind of reminds you of, like, yeah, it's not the easiest schedule, and it's hard to really get into a routine sleep-wise, but you see like how significant it is and how much it means to people when you see fans that are willing to stand in like minus 15-degree weather just to hope to try to get autographs from some of the guys on the team.
Let's talk a little bit about the recent draft. Of course, we cannot talk about the free agency because there's a moratorium on that. We can maybe do that for another show down the road. But let's talk about the draft. How did the Pelicans, in your view, and what the administration feels about the draft and how it affected the Pelicans?
Well, the Pelicans last year traded out of the first round. They traded out of this year's first round so that they could get Drew Holiday, who was an all-star 2 seasons ago for the Sixers. They also had a trade in 2009 where they gave away their second-round pick in 2014, which obviously is this year. So they actually went into this year's draft with no picks, but they ended up trading a guy who didn't have any NBA experience yet for Russ Smith from Louisville, who I'm sure a lot of people know from a lot of the games that he played against Syracuse over the previous years while they were in the same conference. And so he was really the only addition that the Pelicans made during the draft. I'm curious to see how he's going to do because he's one of those guys that's kind of the classic. He's a scorer in college, and people see him as kind of a two-guard, but he's only 6 foot, I think, or 6'1". Mm-hmm. So he's going to have to kind of transition over to being a point guard, which seems to be the case with a lot of guys. There's a lot of players in college who are great scorers and great players,
right.
But when they get to the NBA, they kind of have the skills at one position, but size of a different position. So that's basically the guy that we're going to be watching this week. And actually Thursday, the team heads out to Las Vegas. So Friday night we play our first summer league game out there. So he'll be getting a chance right away to show what he can do in the NBA against this level of competition.
Hey Jim Sinacropi here.
Hey Jim.
James Sutherland's on the Pelicans, former Syracuse shooter. How have you had a chance to talk to him and what's going on in his life right now?
Yeah, he was an interesting situation. You know, in a way, his situation kind of summed up the Pelicans' year last year because they had. I think he was playing well in the D League and he was doing a nice job. But really, the reason that he got a chance to move up to or get called up to the NBA was because the Pelicans had so many injuries that by the beginning of April last year, when there was about a week or two left into the season, I think at one point they only had 7 healthy players. So he got signed to the team with about 4 games left in the regular season, which is not the most ideal situation, obviously. But, I mean, great for him that he got a chance to, get on the court. And I think his first game was against his first game for us was against Oklahoma City. He had 10 points and looked really good. The last couple games, he really didn't get a chance to do too much or play that much, but he did actually get on the court. So he's kind of an X factor. I'm not really sure what to expect from him, just because he got a chance to get in practices with the team and get in a few games, but it wasn't a huge chunk of time. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they liked him enough to invite him to play on the summer league team, I think definitely is a good statement for him. And I'm pretty sure he's been in New Orleans sporadically the last few weeks, practicing with guys and working out with guys to get ready for this year. He's actually been at a couple community events that the team has done, such as they have like a AAA baseball team here that does an annual Pelicans night every year. So he was kind of the guest at that. So, but people are just looking forward to seeing what he'll do. I'm not sure what kind of opportunity he's going to have, but I mean, there's so much in flux right now with the roster and everything's just starting. So, Las Vegas will be a chance for him to show what he can do and show if he deserves to be in consideration for a roster spot next season.
Okay, let's. Jermichael Hoffler is joining us this morning on Weber This Week. Good to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. And Jim, of course, having worked at Finger Lakes Times, a local boy, Geneva, grew up in Waterloo. His parents, both teachers. Jim, people knew you were coming on this morning and asked me to ask you a couple questions. Why the name change from the Hornets to the Pelicans? Give us a quick snapshot of why the name change.
The easiest explanation is that I think when Tom Benson bought the team, he's also the owner of the New Orleans Saints in the NFL. He wanted the team to have a name that was more reflective of Louisiana. Louisiana is the Pelican state.
Right.
So that was the name that he came up with. Also, I think everyone thought that, not everyone, but I think a lot of people thought that when the team moved here from Charlotte that they should have changed the nickname at that time. But the owner of the team who founded the Hornets in Charlotte, I don't think ever gave that any consideration. So ideally, I think when they moved here in 2002, they probably should have changed the nickname.
Okay.
But it just ended up being something they did 11 years later, I guess.
Okay. Somebody asked me. Now, another thing, as far as fan support for the Pelicans, how do you rate it? Is it outstanding? Is it to be improved? Is it something that the fans swarm into your stadium to check out the Pelicans, the basketball arena? Where does that stand as far as looking at other teams and what you see and write about every single day of your life?
I think it needs more time to get traction.
Okay.
Because if you look at the 11 years that the team's been here, or 12 years now, they had 3 years here, 2 years where they were gone for Katrina. Then they had a bunch of years of turmoil of whether the team was going to stay here or not. Then they had the name change. It's just been constant. I would venture to say that no team in the NBA has had as insane or tumultuous last dozen years as this one has.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as the team gains traction, and I actually think the name Pelicans is going to help. I think you'll see the fan support continuing to increase. But I think the people here have shown that when you give them a reason to support the team, they will do so in huge numbers. And so during the 07-08 season, for example, which was the first full year back here after Katrina, the season ended with like 20 consecutive sellouts. And the team almost made the Western Conference Finals that year. Only needed one more win to do that. And, I mean, the fan support just went through the roof.
That's awesome.
So I think you do hear people sometimes criticize the fan support here, but I think there's been so many extenuating factors that have made it. It's been, I think, as some of the people that worked for the team previously have said, it's been hard to be a fan of this team just because I've always said myself, too, that there were many times that I've worked for this team that I've been like, can we please talk about basketball? Can we please not have all these distractions, such as the owner, the NBA owned the team for a couple of years. That was a massive distraction, as you can imagine.
Sure.
Right.
There were all kinds of issues that had nothing to do with basketball, even though this was one of the best teams in the league for a stretch of a few years. It seemed like there were always these other issues.
Right.
Well, that's basically what's great going on right now is just that we finally can focus on basketball and everything is kind of in place now.
Well, I got a basketball question for you, Jim.
Sure.
You know, the way it is in the NBA during this free agent period, that's almost where championships seem to be won. And I know you can't talk about free agency, but you know, looking at the Pelicans roster, so many great young names: Anthony Davis, Austin Rivers, Tyreek Evans, Eric Gordon, Drew Holiday. You guys drafted Russ Smith. It's just seems like a nice nucleus of great young talent. You know, going into this season, or even looking at maybe a 2 or 3 year window, when is it when a team like this, a young player, starts to say, okay, we're going to make a run, at an NBA title this year? Because even looking at the rest right now, it doesn't seem like the Pelicans are able to compete with the Spurs or the Heat if LeBron stays and all that. But so how do you build a franchise towards that point? Because you're stacked with young talent.
Well, I think the first part of that with this team specifically is that they don't know how far they are away from being able to compete at an elite level because they had so many injuries last year that if you look at the roster on paper like you did and you list off all the names of really good players, a couple guys, one of the guys that you didn't even mention was like Ryan Anderson is one of the best shooters in the league. He missed about 60 games last year. Drew Holiday missed 40-something games. So it's hard to really evaluate how far away they are right now just because that was supposed to be last season. Last season was supposed to be the chance for everybody, including the team themselves, to look at the roster and say, how good is this team? They basically put together a roster of a lot of guys who are around 25, who aren't even in their prime yet, who have a lot of talent on paper. But it was really hard to see how it all could come together because there were only 10 or 12 games last year where the entire core group of players was healthy. So last year ended up being kind of a year where we took a bunch of guys who we didn't expect to play a lot and gave them a lot of minutes out of necessity. And that's how actually the Sutherlands situation ended up happening, was that there were so many guys injured that we ended up with a roster at the end of the season that you never projected would actually be the guys getting a lot of playing time.
Well, listen, the crapshoot on the draft, the recent draft, Jim, certainly Jimmy Santacrobe, an SU grad, and this is a hotbed for SU basketball, as you know, living in this area for most of your life till you moved out. Don't follow the NBA like obviously you do, but I was amazed. You talk about individuals at Syracuse. Tyler Ennis announced he's coming out. He gets drafted in the first round. Jeremy Grant, an outstanding player, gets picked, I think, 38th. And then you get a situation where C.J. Fair, who from all accounts was probably an outstanding player, and according to the media and ESPN analysts, he was a sure shot to make the NBA and potentially be a first rounder, and never got a call. So it's kind of bizarre how these things happen. And I watched C.J. Fair, not as close as Jim watched him since he's a graduate over there, but he looked like a sure fit to be drafted, and he never got the phone to ring. That just kind of stunned me. I don't know if you want to comment or not. That's the way it is with the NBA. You never know, right, where they're going to be drafted or if they're going to get drafted.
I think with him, I wonder if part of it is that kind of what I was saying earlier about guys that play a certain position in college. Sometimes when the NBA scouts try to project what position is this guy going to be, they have a hard time doing that.
Okay.
I think that might have been the case with him.
Yeah.
But the one thing I thought about him too is it's always it's not PC to say this, but I thought he should have come out after his junior year, because it seemed like his stock was really high, and he actually, by coming back, I don't think there's any doubt that he hurt his NBA chances because he didn't get drafted. I think if he had come out the year before, there's no way that he wouldn't have been picked by somebody.
Wow.
Like you said, there was a lot of talk that he was going to go in the first round.
Yeah.
The year before, I thought I had heard that he would go like maybe 20 or something like that.
Coming off the Final Four.
I definitely was surprised, like you were, that he didn't get picked. It's too bad because he seems like he definitely has the ability to be an NBA player, to be a role player. I always liked his game. The fact that he's just so steady.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that doesn't make mistakes. So, but he's actually on Dallas's summer league team.
I saw
that.
So
I'm probably going to actually be able to get a chance to see him play at some point next week in Las Vegas. So I'll be curious to see how he does.
Good. Well, listen, we know that we're almost out of time. We do appreciate you joining us for a few minutes this morning. We wish you nothing but the best, and we wish the Pelicans nothing but the best, and hope that you'll join us down the road a few months from now and give us an update of how the team is doing, and look forward to continuation of the discussion.
No doubt. I'm honored to be on the show. I appreciate you guys asking me to do it.
Well, listen, we're honored that you took part in it and said yes. So we're echoing both sentiments. So, Jim, thanks an awful lot for spending some time with us, and good luck to the Pelicans. We'll be checking them out this year.
All right, take care. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Jim.
Thanks. Okay, Jermichael Hoffler joins us live via the phone from New Orleans, the home of the Pelicans in the NBA. And we thank Jim for carving out 20 minutes. And keep in mind, folks, they're an hour behind us, so maybe he likes to sleep in on a Monday, and I had to get him up early for the interviews. So thanks to Jim. We'll take a break here from our great sponsors, come back with a few comments about a few other topics before we wrap up. Eagle Lake National Bank. Bill Ryan and his team for all of your banking needs. Offices in Union Springs and Aurora. A fine sponsor of this show for over 30 years. DA Liquor, Seneca Falls. Amy Padula and her great team will find that right spirit for you every time. Tell Amy the dog sent you. Steve Wadhams, Wadhams Enterprises, your employer of choice. Proud supporter of this show and local athletics. Bob and Leslie Oman, owners of the Oman Theater in Lions, as well as the Newark Pilots, a minor league baseball team with a major league ballpark. Lizard's Tailgater Lounge, Waterloo, best mott sticks around, where you can enjoy a drink and some laughs. SenecaFallsCountryClub.com, awesome 18-hole layout, offering a 12-month payment plan. Home of the toughest par 4 in central New York. Wilson Press, WPress.com. Seneca Falls, Rich Ricky, my good friend, and his team can handle all of your printing and mailing needs. Rich Ricky, Wilson Press, a fine sponsor of Weber This Week. Welcome back, everybody. The Dog with you in the Candle here on a Monday, July 7th. Hope you had a nice weekend. Yeah, the forecast this week supposed to be a little warm tomorrow. Chance of some showers, so if you're going to play golf, bring an umbrella. Hey, speaking of the NBA, let's send out kudos to Dave Barnick country out in south end of the county. No, now Dave Barnick's the Dave Barnick that I hired back in the 70s to help me do broadcasting, and, of course, I turned him into a legend out in the south end. But Dave Barnick and his kids are doing spectacularly well. The daughter is doing great. And speaking of the NBA, Dave Barnick Jr., young Dave, Jimmy, just got hired by the Sacramento Kings, and he's going to be involved in working with their corporate partnerships.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got a chance to meet him this winter when he was in the gym at Minders in a game Dave was announcing. And, at this rate, we might have a contact with every NBA city before long.
That's right. So kudos from all of us here at FingerLakes1.com Sports and Weather this week to Dave Barnick Jr., who just landed a job working with corporate partnerships with the Sacramento Kings. And twist of irony, ironically, last night the reruns are underway during the summer months, 60 minutes. We get sort of bored, me and Mary, trying to watch programs. We got about 7,000 channels, and there's nothing really exciting to watch. So we watched a rerun of 60 Minutes. They did a piece on the guy from India who owns the Sacramento Kings, and thought that was pretty interesting. So I thought that was really timely. So kudos to Dave Barnick for landing that job. We wish Dave the best of luck. And, his dad's shooting 75 in the golf club at Seneca Falls.
Is he?
Oh, yeah, 75 in the front, then he plays the back.
Gotcha.
But kudos to Dave Barnick, and we wish him nothing but the best. Hey, let's talk about the World Cup. Yes, I know America has been eliminated. And you know what? I think America did a wonderful job. The coach, before it started, said we had zero chance of winning the thing. And then all of a sudden he started changing his opinion as we advanced through a couple of those rounds. So, hey, is America ever going to win a World Cup? It might happen, but I don't think it's going to happen in the near future. I really don't. I mean, they only play this every 4 years. I mean, look at the teams that are left. I mean, if you had to lay out the NCAA bracket and do a bracket for the World Cup, would you have not picked Germany, Brazil, Argentina? And the Netherlands weren't that bad off, so I would think those are 4 of the top 5 or 6 chalks.
Yeah, that bracket went to chalk.
Yeah, they went chalk. Sure. So, I mean, could America win it? Yeah, but I don't see it in the foreseeable future. And again, I'm not anti-American.
Now, I get a big argument with some of my friends about this who are soccer fans that think that we don't have a chance. I mean, we lose the game. We lost our game by 1 goal. We're able to hang with Germany. We're able to hang with Portugal, tied Portugal, and beat Ghana. So, and all these games are like 1-goal games. It's like 0-0 and then go extra time, and then the better team seems to win.
No, you're right.
So I think that the first part of winning something like that is believing you can win, and I think that we believe that we can win. We need a striker who can score with Lionel Messi, or we need that superstar who can actually put the ball in the goal. And a bright spot for the future, the Quinn kid who scored our final goal of the tournament there. 19-year-old kid. Maybe he's the answer. Maybe in 4 years he's going to lead us.
I hope so. And by the way, that coverage resumes tomorrow for World Cup fans. 4 o'clock, I think it's pregame, comes on at 3. That, of course, will be Brazil-Germany, great matchup. And then Wednesday, same time, will be Argentina-Netherlands. And, of course, should be spectacular, and check it out. And I know me and Mary will be watching.
I would never peg you as a soccer guy, but you're into it. You love the World Cup.
Me and Mary are into it. Believe it or not, we're into it, man. We, we have dinner in the living room, and we're just pumped up. And we even put it on pause when we're when Mary's out. I was going to say when I was out cooking. Forget that. When Mary's out preparing supper. Hey, by the way, to all you Yankee fans, I know that it's been a tough year. Sabathia, of course, may not come back. Got the knee problem. It's another $23.5 million a year for that guy. And, I don't want to say he's done. He's toast, but he hasn't been very effective the last 2 years. I'm not so sure it's a major loss, him not being around. But I got to crack up, and I know you Yankee fans hate it when I say it, but they just picked up somebody from a garage sale. Brandon McCarthy from the Diamondbacks. Now, let me throw some stats before I wrap this show up. I know you Yankee fans are passionate about your Bronx Bombers. My wife loves them too, but let's be honest about this. They needed pitching, so they bring this kid in, Brandon McCarthy. Let me show you or throw at you a few Weber stats. He's 3-10 this year. That's 3 wins, 10 losses. You know what his career record is? 30 wins, 46 losses. You know what his ERA is this year? 5.04. So, ladies and gentlemen, Chester Cutterback was at a garage sale that he was running, an auction, and Brandon McCarthy went to the Yankees. Come on, folks. Don't get excited over this kid. I mean, his stats don't tell me that this guy's going to come in and help us. I'm sorry. 3-10 with a 5.04 ERA? Jim Centercroby could do better than that.
Maybe.
Maybe. Hey, by the way, it's been a lot of laughs, as you know. We want to thank Jim Eichenhofer for joining us. We got some exciting shows coming up. different topics as I try to bring in different topics every week. Next week, baby, we're going to have some real hot topic. Jim Dolly from No Tire Casino. He's leading the effort. He's not the only one out there that's leading the effort to stop it. Whether they'll be successful or not, I don't know. It seems like all the politicians in the area are rubber stamping this thing. Some $430 million casino complex, a.k.a. Las Vegas. Here we are, baby, out in Port Tire, New York. I still haven't fathomed how that's all going to work from an infrastructure standpoint, but Jim Dolly will be on the couch next week, and he may bring somebody with him to talk about why he and his bunch of folks that are together determined that this is not the right place to have a casino. Jim's not against gambling. It's just that the location is driving him nuts and a host of others. It's still in litigation. Courts are going to rule on this, I guess, down the road. So Jim Dolly will be our guest next week of why he and his counterparts are anti-casino in entire New York. You won't want to miss that show. The following week, we thought we would do a human interest story. The Robinette family's been close to me for years. I have been going to Robinette since I was 16, and that's a long time ago. 70 years of business they're going to celebrate this month. 70. Phenomenal.
Right here in downtown Seneca Falls.
Downtown Seneca Falls, they have survived for 7 decades. Mark Robinette will be on the couch on the 21st of July talking about his business, his family business, how it's still in business, how he's doing against the competition, the big box stores like K Jewelers and a host of others. So that'll be an interesting one as well. We're also trying to get in the DA on the show. We hope to pull that off in the next couple of days. We're trying to get in Barry Porce to talk about his role as our district attorney, which, of course, you know will take up 30 minutes with all that he's got to say about his role and his assistance prosecuting the bad guys and the bad ladies out there in our county and around the area. So we want to thank Jim Eichenhofer for joining us again. We wish all of you a great week, everybody. Enjoy yourself, and we'll catch you next week as Jim Dolly will be my special guest. Again, thanks to Jim Eichenhofer. That's a look at Weber This Week, my way.
By becoming a patron of FingerLakes1.com. Visit patreon.com/FL1.
FingerLakes1.com. Come on and join.